Okay, good day, students. So, welcome to Principles of Accounting. We will be employing the steps of accounting principles. All right, so we will be analyzing several sample transactions or business transactions. So, at first, we will have to think whether what entries or what account should be done or should be entered into the book of account, and we'll have to enter these transactions into the journal notebook. What is a journal notebook? So this is an example of the journal notebook wherein we enter all the business transactions daily. We will have to write the date here, then the accounts that will be affected by each transaction, and then so at this column we write all the decimal places. And if you will notice, there is a date wherein your business has been registered. If this is your first time to enter transactions, the or BIR will look when have you started your business if this is not the first time, so they may look for further book of accounts wherein you have entered your previous transactions. So if this is your first time, you make sure that you indicate the date wherein you have started your business. So these are the reference number for each transaction or of each entry, and this will be the column for the dates. So you may write the month and the year here, and then you write all the debits uh, in this column, and then all the credits will be in this column, and the credit account will be indented, and the note for this transaction. So this is one transaction. So the note for this transaction is recorded on the third line or third row. So make sure that for every date, uh, there will be an indication of what transactions have come to pass. So if there are no transaction, make sure that you indicate it also, because the governing body that will inspect this will be questioning you for every transaction in each day. So this is the example of a journal notebook. All right, on the first transaction on January 5, it says here that Metal Corporation signed and received a loan of about 1.2 million pesos payable for 10 years with about an interest of 3% per annum. So first, in analyzing a transaction, let's see what type of or what accounts could possibly be affected by this transaction. If Metal Corporation received a loan, hence one of the things that will be affected will be its cash. So when analyzing what account will be affected, let's classify each account whether this will be categorized under ADE or LER account. This one are the or is one of the techniques I have taught you in analyzing accounts, whether these accounts will be under normal debit balance or normal credit balance. So these are normal debit balances, and these are normal credit balances. So when we say cash, cash belongs to this side, wherein this means assets, drawings, and expenses. This one are liabilities, equity, and revenue. An increase in the or an increase on the accounts that belongs on ADE, an increase on these accounts. This means that the value of that increase must be written under the debit side, and an increase or a decrease on these accounts will means it has to be written on the credit side. On the liabilities, equity and revenue, an increase on these accounts, this means that an increase on this must be written, the value must be written under the credit column. And the decrease on these accounts means that values must be written under the debit column. So this is just a technique wherein you can use in analyzing business transactions. So at first, on number one, on the business transaction number one, what are the accounts that will be affected? First is, of course, if Bethel will receive a loan, hence Bethel's cash will be increased. Hence, cash is under what side? This is an asset. So see cash will be increased. Hence, this must be written as debit. What other things could possibly be affected? If this is a payable, hence accounts payable will be increased. So accounts payable belongs to liabilities. So, but take note that this payable is good for 10 years. Hence, this must be written under notes payable, because this is a non-current asset, or I mean liability rather, because this must be settled more than 1 year. So notes payable So there will be an increase in the notes payable, and an increase in the notes payable means the value must be credited on it. If there is a debit, there must be a credit. So that's the pair on the first transaction. So how do we write it? Let's take a look on our journal. This is our journal. So let's utilize Excel, since it will be much easier for us to add and subtract or total things out. So let's first indicate here the date. So this could be the year 2024, and the date is January 5. Okay, so here's the journal. We write the date here, so we will be utilizing Excel. So we already write the year and the date for the first transaction. It's January 5. And then for the particulars, the first transaction that will be encoded is ulit. Okay, so for our first transaction, it says here that on January 5, Bethel Corporation signed and received a loan of 1.2 million payable for 10 years with about 3% interest per annum. So upon writing it in the journal, so we will be utilizing Excel for us to be a lot for it to be easier to compute. So we indicate the year 2024, and then we may write the date here, January 5. For the particulars, we write it under this column. So these are two columns, C and D. I indented letter D because for us to be able to indent the credit accounts. So for the first one, for the first transaction, the first account that will be affected, of course, if a company receive money, of course, one of the accounts that will be affected is cash. So we write it here. And since the liability is good for 10 years, this is under non-current liabilities. So we may write it as notes payable, since the corporation signed and received about 1.2 million. So for the notes payable, we indicate it there. So we write a note that, or we may not enter brackets. We'll just have to write the note. Okay, so loan from Bethel. Oh, no, no, no. Loan from the company. Loan from company ABC. Alright, so for the debit, we debit 1,200,000. So for the credit side, okay, 1.2 million. That is for January 5. Remember that this one, the first transaction, is has to be paid at the end of the year. Alright, so we'll highlight this one so we could remember that we'll have to come back to this transaction at the end of the year upon adjusting entries. The company will have to settle its obligation to this company. So, alright. For the next transaction on January 7, so we enter January 7. Bethel Corporation started a capital of 700,000 from its shareholders with about 500 pesos per share. So it started a capital of 700,000. Hence, there will be a cash on hand given to the company. So one of the accounts that will be affected is cash. And of course, this will be the owner's equity or the capital. So let's write it as owner's equity. By the way, owner's equity is used for corporations, and with capital will be used for sole proprietorship business. So for cash, this is debited to the cash account. This is about 700,000 pesos. And this will be credited to the owner's equity. Why? Of course, so let's get back to our code. Cash is under this one, the assets, and equity will be under this one. So there will be an increase in cash since we have received 700,000 pesos from its shareholders, and about an increase in its equity. So we'll have to credit it on the journal. So that's the explanation. So received capital from shareholders. So this is the same with the word withdrawal and drawings. Withdrawal is used by usually sole proprietorship type of business, while drawings is used by corporations. Alright, for the third transaction, it says here that on January 8, Bethel Corporation purchased merchandise for sale worth 450,000 pesos. If there is a purchase, if there is a purchase, of course, one of the things that will be decreased or will be affected, of course, will be cash. So if cash is affected, this means cash will be increased or decreased. So of course, if there is a purchase, cash will be decreased. And another thing that will be affected is the inventory of merchandise. So let's write it as an inventory. Inventory has to be categorized. Does it belong to assets, drawings, expenses, liabilities, equity, or revenue? Since inventory belongs to our assets, we'll have to write it here. Inventory. Okay? So if there is a decrease in cash, that means this has to be credit. And if there is a purchase, inventory will be increased. And that means there will be debit. So whether the transaction belongs to these two different categories, there will always be a credit and a debit. Alright? So for this transaction, since inventory is the debit side, we'll have to write the inventory first in the journal. So let's write the inventory. So these are the list of things to be sold out. Next is the cash. Cash will be debited or credited rather with about how much? 700,000. Oh no, 450. 450,000 pesos. So, yan. And inventory will be debited with 450,000 pesos also. Upon writing the notes, you may include the OR number. So, purchased inventory from, let's say, Prince Mall. From Prince Mall, if that's indicated in your transactions, or if that will be your transaction, if you have purchased this inventory from Prince Mall. So, with the OR number, okay, 1, 2, 3. All right. Next transaction. So we're done with the third transaction. We will be proceeding to the fourth transaction. This is January 10. So on January 10, okay, 5, 7, 8, 10. On January 10, Bethel Corporation purchased a plant equipment of around 30,000 pesos. So plant equipment, what are the accounts that will be affected by plant equipment? So upon analysis, when purchasing your the first account that will be affected, of course, will be what? Cash. Kasi bumili ka eh. So, nabawasan yung cash mo. And one of the things that will be affected, another is the equipment. So, iba yung equipment, iba yung inventory. Yung equipment, yun yung mga machines na ginagamit dun sa yung production. So, equipment is increase the list of equipment. So, take note, I have written this word equipment under this category because this is an asset. That's why ni-increase ang equipment, that will be debit, and ni-decrease ang yung cash, that will be credit. So, let's write it or journalize it here. So, equipment will be debited while cash will be credited. So, asa na yun? January 10. So, remember ha, meron tayong value sa ating depreciation ng pwedeng ma-compute at the end of the year. So, let's highlight this one because there are still transactions or there are still things na unfinished dito na pwede pang i-compute until the end of this transaction. So, Equipment will be increased by how much? 30,000 pesos. And your cash will be decreased by 30,000 pesos. Okay, nasobrahan ng zero. That is the purchase of, let's say, vacuum fryer. Mura ng vacuum fryer mo, 30,000 pesos lang. Okay? Lagyan mo ng OR number ang iyong source document. OR number 456. Okay. And then for January 11, the next transaction is that Bethel Corporation ordered merchandise. Again, so nadagdagan yung kanyang inventory, yung kanyang ibinibenta on account from 3 Mary's Farm product worth of 300,000 to be settled on December. Okay, on December. It means, hindi pa to settled ha, kasi may babalikan tayo sa December. So, highlight natin yan. Ano yung gagawin mo? First, you will have to analyze ano yung maapektuhan. So, umorder daw siya ng merchandise or inventory. Ano yung tataas dito? Ano yung magi-increase? Of course, magi-increase, number 1 na magi-increase is si inventory. No? So, magi-increase inventory. So, erase natin yung cash since hindi naman, walang involved na cash kasi inutang siya. So, yung mag-i-increase sa kanya, so sa inventory, again, under this column, kasi inventory is under asset. So, inventory, ano pa? On account, yung utang. So, ano yung utang? It's under liabilities. So, to be settled kailan? On December. So, current liability lang to. So, accounts payable lang to. Accounts payable. Okay? So, sa inventory, ano mangyayari kay inventory? Madadagdagan o mababawasan? So, sa inventory, madadagdagan kasi umutang ka na, dumami yung inventory mo. So, yung inventory, pag nadagdagan, automatic, that will be debit. Accounts payable naman, dahil liability siya, tataas yung listahan mo ng utang. So, madadagdagan yung accounts payable mo, that will means credit side doon sa kanyang account. Okay? So, meron ka ng debit, may credit ka na, you'll have to enter this on the journal. Okay? So, first, madadagdagan yung inventory natin. At madadagdagan din yung ating accounts payable. Okay? So, madami tayong pwedeng maging reason ng accounts payable. Pwedeng umutang ka, kaya nakulangan o pambayad ng kuryente. Pero, that's why, ito, lagyan natin ng note na purchased inventory. No, inventory from, sabihin natin Alcala naman. Okay, Alcala. OR number 789. Ayan, maubos na yung mga numbers natin. Purchased. Okay, 789. How much yung inventory mo na debit? It's 300,000 pesos. 300,000 pesos. Alright. Next. January 13 naman. Ayan, class. January 13, yung Green Solutions Feeding Mill Corporation, bumili kay Bethel, bought raw materials from Bethel Corporation, payable within 6 months. So, in short class, hindi niya binayaran, pero, meron tong babalikan na transaction. And another 600,000 payable for 2 years. This transaction cost 540,000 worth of goods for Bethel. Okay, ano yung mga accounts na maapektuhan? Dahil nagbenta siya pero utang. Pero may pinagkaiba to, yung utang niya merong payable within a year, merong more than a year. So, we can write it as notes payable ba? So, okay. So, paano? Anong madadagdagan natin? Revenue. Revenue is under what category? Dito yan, sa normal credit balance. So, lagay mo dyan yung revenue kasi revenue yung madadagdagan sa atin. Revenue. So, revenue belongs here in this column. So, lagay natin dyan yung revenue. Ano pa yung maapektuhan? Ano yung maapektuhan? Since bumili sila, accounts receivable to. Isang for long term, isang for short term. So, let's say, lagay natin na accounts receivable. Ang accounts receivable is under what category? Dito sa normal debit or normal credit balances. So, since accounts receivable is under normal debit balances, dito natin ilagay yung accounts receivable. Okay. So, we can indicate it here as ang accounts receivable natin ay worth madadagdagan ba yung accounts receivable natin? Yes. Madadagdagan yung revenue? Yes. So, ang increase in revenue will be credit. Increase in accounts receivable will be debit. So, automatic. Ito yung una nating ilalagay, no? So, how much are the receivables. So the receivables are isang 350 and 650,000 for 600,000 for 2 years. Okay, so this will be 6, 7, 8, 950,000. 950,000. Okay, 950. So since debit ang accounts receivable yung una nating isusulat. So for January 13, let's write it as accounts receivable. How much? 950,000. And for our revenue. Ayan. Purchase of green solutions on account. Sales na lang, instead of purchase. Sales to, para hindi naman malito kasi when we say purchase, tayo yung bumili. In our point of view, let's write sales to green solutions on account. Okay, pwede mo rin lagyan ng OR number yan, depende. Okay, so okay na. Pero kailangan natin yung balikan mamaya. Since, kailangan yan i-settle within 6 months or within the year matatapos yan. So let's say we will be writing or we will be producing financial statements on December. So kailangan nating i-close yung mga yan. Next is January 14, Bethel Corporation paid its rent for the whole year of about 72,000 pesos. So what happens? So January 14. So for the whole year. So hindi pa naman tapos, January pa lang pero binayaran niya na. So since advance to, babalikan natin yan mamaya kasi sa December, ma-accumulate yan, diba? So, we'll have to come back to that. So, ano yung maapektuhan dyan? So, diretso na tayo dito. Unang maapektuhan dyan is prepaid rent and cash. Mababawasan yung cash kasi nagbayad ka. So, decrease in cash will means credit. So, unahin natin yung credit dito sa baba. At yung debit is yung prepaid rent. So, how much is it? It's 72,000. Okay. Okay. Paid rent in advance for the whole year. Okay. Next is January 8. January 15. Transaction number 8. January 15. Ito nga palang reference number na to. Ito yung mga reference number na ilalagay mo doon sa ledger mo para malaman mo kung saan nakalagay yung cash mo doon sa ledger. Okay, kung baga listahan number 1, number 2, number 3. So, yun yung magiging reference number mo. So, sa January 15, what happened? So, nakasell siya ng goods in cash of about 45,000 to 5 shepherds, which cost about 23,000 pesos. I would also like to introduce to you to another type of account. So, under sa expenses. So, you must remember that in every time nga magkaroon tayo ng revenue na buy and sell yung business natin, 'di ba? Kanina meron tayong inventory. So pag nakabenta ka, of course mababawasan yung inventory mo. Pero kanina ano lang yung na-affected doon sa entry natin, 'di ba? Cash lang at saka yung revenue natin, yung listahan ng sales. Pero hindi natin na-account yung inventory na nabawas. So every time na meron nga nababawas sa inventory, we also have to account it sa journal. Lahat ng nangyayari sa business, kailangan ma-record natin sa journal. Otherwise, hindi siya magbabalance in the end, no? So, this point, we will have to account inventory. So, si inventory, mababawasan or matataas. Inventory. So, of course, dahil nakabenta ka, si inventory mo bababa. That means, si inventory kasi diba under yan ang assets. So, which is a normal debit. So, dahil bumaba ito, makikredit to. So, I would also like to introduce you to the cost of goods sold or COGS. Isa to mga type ng expenses. So, ang listahan mo ng cost of goods sold. So, ang cost of goods sold mo ay tumaas. That's why, madidebit siya dyan. Okay? So, upon entering it to our journal, under January 13, yes, January 13, we'll have to indicate the cost of goods sold. Cost of goods sold, or the COGS, and the inventory na bumaba. Okay, so hindi ko na nilagyan ng date kasi under din siya ng January 13 na transaction. So, sales to green solutions. Okay, how much again ang cost ng inventory? Sabi dito ang transaction worth 540,000. 540,000. So, na-debit sa cost of goods sold at na-credit naman siya sa inventory kasi nabawasan yung ating inventory. Okay, to proceed sa next transaction. Sabi dito sa next transaction on January 14, Bethel Corporation paid its rent for the whole year of about 72,000 pesos. So, again, January pa lang, binayaran niya na yung ating rent. So, in short, at the end of the year, we'll have to account this one kasi magkano na lang yung prepaid rent natin sa December. Kunyari, we will have to create a financial statement, mag-close ng books every calendar year. So, babalikan natin yan mamaya. I-highlight natin siya kasi may transaction pa tayo dyan mamaya na tatapusin na i-close. Alright, so how do we enter it sa journal entry natin? So, for our journal entry, ano yung maapektuhan when we pay our rent? Of course, number one, ang bababa ay yung under ng asset ay cash. Ano pa? Prepaid rent. Prepaid rent is under asset. Kasi meron kang nabayaran na. Prepaid rent. Okay. Prepaid rent. So, si prepaid rent mo ay tataas. Okay? Dahil both siya sa asset. Cash, kapag bumaba si cash, magiging credit. So, pag tumaas si prepaid rent, magiging debit. Okay? So, first natin isusulat si prepaid rent dun sa ating journal entry. Okay? So, we will be indicating it here, prepaid rent as prepaid rent, and then we will write credit to our cash. How much? Of 72,000 pesos. 72,000 pesos. So, for our note, paid rent in advance for the year 2024. Alright, for our next transaction class, sabi dito, January 15, yung Bethel Corporation, nakabenta daw siya ng goods in cash for about 45,000 to 5 Shepherds Incorporated, which cost 23,000. So, again, may transaction. First transaction natin, mamaya na yung inventory. Ano nangyari? Nagkaroon ng sales. So, let's indicate the date. January 15. Ano yung tataas dito kapag nagkaroon ng sales? Of course, cash. So, magde-debit tayo sa cash and mag-credit tayo sa revenue. So, sales to 5 Shepherds. Usually, may mga company na madami ng sales per day. Hindi mo na maiisa-isa lahat ng customers. Ito, sales kay 5 Shepherds, sales kay ganito. Usually, ang nangyayari dyan, kapag malalaking company na, sa isang araw, yung transaction ng sales, isa na lang. Total, yung lahat ng transaction ng sales, lalagay mo dyan sa cash. Revenue, lalagay mo dyan for the whole day. But since, for the sake of studying this lesson, so, isa-isahin natin, no? So, nagkaroon tayo ng sales worth 45,000. Again, kapag may sales class, don't forget to indicate our inventory. Kung may inventory tayong kasama sa transaction. So, paano natin yung lalagay dito? Sa listahan, madedebit or mag-i-increase yung cost of goods sold natin. Okay? So, and inventory. Yan. Copy na lang natin to para mabilis. So, inventory sales to 5 Shepherds. Okay, how much class? It's about 23,000 yung worth ng inventory. Ito yung puhunan, kumbaga. Okay, that's for January 8. January 15. So, let's proceed to the next transaction. Alright. So, for January 16, I will be indicating the date. Our transaction would be Bethel Corporation purchased additional equipment for about 50,000 pesos, which will be fully depreciated in 10 years. Kumbaga, wala siyang scrap value. Assuming that the depreciation will be accounted on December. So, highlight again natin kasi December, gagamitin ulit natin itong information na to. So, anong mababawasan dito kapag bumili ka? Cash mo. So, credit ka na sa cash. And then, anong madadagdagan? Equipment. So, 50,000 pesos. Okay? 50. Okay, halimbawa, ilagay mo dyan, ano ba to? Purchase of, let's say, dehydrator na lang. Dehydrator. OR number, okay, 987. Okay, so meron na tayong equipment. Bethel Corporation lent 15,000 pesos to 5 shepherds to be paid before December 31. Uy, malaki yung interest. Okay. So, nang hiram siya, ito babalikan natin kasi may interest to eh. Babayaran niya daw sa December na. So, babalikan natin yan. Pero as of now, ang mangyayari, maglalabas tayo ng pera at madadagdagan yung ating accounts receivable. So, since madadagdagan yung accounts receivable is under asset, so debit normal balance yan. So, accounts receivable. Tapos, mababawasan yung cash natin. Okay. Lend 15,000 to 5 shepherds. Okay, how much? 15,000. That is under January 17. Next transaction class is January 18. So, sa January 18 daw, si Bethel, nakabenta siya ng sales of about 550,000, which cost of only about. So, may sales na naman tayo. Pag may sales, ano yung madadagdagan? Yung cash. So, madadagdagan yung cash. Okay. Tapos, madadagdagan yung revenue. Okay. Sales to ABC Corp. Okay. Halimbawa lang yan. Okay. How much? 550,000. 550,000. Okay. Pero, yung cost nito ay 255. So, class ha, huwag niyong kalilimutan na bawasan yung inventory. So, ang katumbas niyan ay cost of goods sold or COGS. And, nabawasan yung inyong inventory. Credit siya kasi normal debit balance to. Nabawasan eh. How much? 255,000. 255. 1, 2, 3. Alright. Next transaction class. Sa January 19. So, for January 19, ang transaction natin ay Bethel Corporation received full payment of loan from 5 Shepherds Incorporated with interest. In short, isa-settle niya na yung utang niya dito sa January 17. So, ano yung mga maapektuhan na dito na transaction or accounts? Dahil nagbayad siya, of course, yung madadagdagan natin is yung cash. Yan. Ano naman yung iba pang accounts na maapektuhan? So, kung nagbayad siya ng cash, wala na siyang utang. So, wala na tayong accounts receivable. Then, mind you guys, yung accounts receivable natin from this company is only 15,000. So, ano naman yung interest? Yung 4% ng 15,000, ita-time siya sa 0.04. Yung 40% converted into decimal, magiging 0.4. Yung 10% converted into decimal, 0.1. So, dahil 4% ang interest, 0.04. So, 600 siya. So, 600 plus 15,000 yung babayaran niya ay 15,600. So, 600 yung ating interest. So, paano mo yan isusulat? So, again, cash na dagdagan. Yung accounts receivable mo is your mababawasan. So, pag nabawasan ang accounts receivable which is under this category, that will be credit. So, yan. Credit yan, debit. Tapos, dahil 15,000 lang to, ano naman yung isa? So, if may accounts receivable, meron tayong interest na revenue, may kita. So, dahil revenue siya, increase in revenue will means credit. Okay, so, ang debit natin ay cash. Okay, debit natin yung cash. Credit natin is accounts receivable. Since mababawasan yung receivable. And interest revenue. Kasi nagpautang ka. Okay, so yung cash natin ay 15,600 yung natanggap natin. Yung accounts receivable mo ay 15,000. At yung interest mo na nakinita is 600. So, may double entry na tayo or compound entry. So, this means 5 shepherds settled account of 5 shepherds. Okay? So, ayan, okay na yung ating January 19. For our next transaction on January 20, yung Bethel Corporation, iyang gisettle ang iyahang utang. 50,000 of its short-term debts and paid salaries of its employee worth 55,000 pesos. So, pwede mo yung isulat as dalawa yung account mo sa, or deduction mo sa cash, 50 and 55. Pwedeng i-plus mo na lang yung deduction mo sa cash. So, how? Let's say, susulat ko siya ng January 20. ano yung maapektuhan mong mga accounts dito. Una, yung cash, mababawasan. So, decrease in cash. So, that means credit, no? And then, short-term debts. So, ano ni Bethel, payables, accounts payable. Accounts payable is under this category. So, accounts payable is, ano mangyayari kay accounts payable? Mababawasan. So, that means debit. So, DR, CR. And, salaries sa employee. So, ano pa yung maapektuhan? Cash din, no? Ano yung salaries sa employee? It's an expense. So, salaries expense. Salaries expense. Is it a increase or decrease? So, for the list of salaries expense, increase siya doon sa expenses. So, increase siya doon sa listahan ng salaries. Hence, dahil increase siya, debit yan dyan. Okay? Paano natin siya isusulat? So, debit siya sa accounts payable, debit siya sa salaries, credit siya sa cash. Okay? So, sabihin natin, isusulat na natin as ganito. So, debit siya sa accounts payable, debit siya sa salaries expense. Okay? Then, credit siya sa cash kasi mababawasan yung cash. Pwede ko yung isulat na ganyan. Pwede rin ganito. Para hindi nakakalito. Para dun sa utang, okay, cash. Tapos notes. Tapos ilagay ko dito ng accounts. Salaries expense pala. Isulat ko dito ng salaries expense. And cash. Okay? So, sabihin natin, pinaghiwalay ko na lang para hindi nakakalito. So, accounts payable, paid its obligation, and paid employees. Okay? Okay, so for the accounts payable, nabawasan yung accounts payable natin ng how much? 55,000. And then for the salaries, short-term debts pala ng 50,000. So 50,000 na nabawas doon sa ating accounts payable. Okay, so okay na. So, another transaction sa January 21. Shareholders have distributed about 15,000 dividends among its incorporators. So, nag-withdraw siya ng 15,000 pesos. So, magkakaroon ng listahan ng mga withdrawals. So, withdrawals belongs to what category? Debit normal balance or credit normal balance. So, since it belongs to our debit normal balance, dahil andito yung drawings or withdrawals. So, yung withdrawals natin, nadagdagan yung listahan natin ng withdrawals. In short, nagkaroon ng increase. So, debit siya. And yung credit natin is mapupunta dun sa cash. Kasi nabawasan yung cash natin. So, since cash belongs to asset, magkakaroon din tayo ng cash, CR. Okay? So, debit withdrawals, credit cash. So, since kunyari, corporation to, hindi siya withdrawals, dividend siya. So, listed siya as dividends. Okay? And cash. So, about 15,000 was accounted. So, let's indicate it as distribution of dividends. But in reality, dividends are usually given to shareholders of corporation sa calendar year na. End na ng calendar or end ng fiscal year. So, end na ng closing na kumbaga ng ating mga accounts. So, hindi sa January. But for the sake of showing it sa ating discussion, let's say may dividends tayo na 15,000 pesos. Nag-withdraw na sila kasi kailangan nila ng pera. Ayan. So, for the last transaction, January 24. But this is not yet the last since we still have adjusting entries. Okay? When we say adjusting entries, kailangan mo pa rin mag-journalize. Okay? So, lahat ng transaction dapat ilagay record sa journal book. So, for January 24, yung Bethel Corporation paid 8,000 to technician for the repair and maintenance expenses. Okay? So, nabawasan na naman yung ating pera. Okay? So, Again, ito, pinaghiwalay niya. Dalawang transaction, no? Nagbayad siya ng 8,000 technician, nagbayad siya ng 12,000 sa utilities. So, dito, pinakita natin dito sa una na magkahiwalay pa, hindi nakakalito. So, ipakita ko naman sa inyo ngayon yung magkasama naman na transaction sa isang araw. So, yung cash ang nabawasan, nadagdagan yung ating repair and maintenance expenses. And maintenance expenses. So, nadagdagan yan. That's why debit siya. And utilities expense. Ang nabawasan ay cash. That's why naka-credit si cash. How much? 20,000. Okay? Yung 8,000 yan ay doon sa repair and maintenance. Sa utilities natin, 12,000. Yung nabayaran niya. Okay? So, that will be the journal entries for this transaction. So,